Good morning, everyone. So it's nice to have you guys. All right, so we actually had we had a form to build. So in class, we actually worked on the form. So everybody had that as we call it an assignment. We had it as a task to actually make our own form. So in case you're having in case you're confused about what I actually asked for, like I said, you can ask me. Ask me on that thread there, so that I'll explain in detail, so that you get it right. Like I said, be creative, just in case. Don't just go and bring the last form that we did and just give to me. So I think we should take note of that. Okay, so let me just go back a bit in time. So teacher, I'll need you to ask your question again.
Okay, sir. So my question is, what's the use of ID? Because I noticed while you were creating the form or coding the form, you didn't input anything in most of the IDs. It's like you left them blank, and then I noticed that there are some that you even cleared it.
So, so let me explain this. IDs basically, when you get into JavaScript, you kind of have to use it to extract information from the user. So even in basic CSS, you use it as a selector. So in JavaScript too, you also use it as a selector. If you want to get like the value of let's say the name inputs, you can use the ID to actually get that value if a user inputs it. So IDs are kind of just selectors for elements. So they help you to get content. So the reason my emphasis actually was not really on using the IDs per se. So it was just so that people know that, okay, you're supposed to have an ID. You could use an ID here. And another thing I wanted us to know is that when you kind of have a label that has the 4 attributes, so the 4 there and the IDs, they are supposed to be the same. They are supposed to have the same value because it's kind of it's like bread and butter. So it's like both of them are actually supposed to go hand in hand. So the label kind of says that, okay, this is a label for the particular. And like I said, IDs are used to select. So you're selecting, you're using the specify that this is actually for this input. That was why I used it while creating the form. I don't know if you get that. You understand that?
Okay, I do. Well, is it okay if the label for the ID and then the name carries the same value?
Yeah, it's your point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Okay. Came the link. Yeah. Jenna, have you came the link? Yeah. The question. Okay. So Oguneme.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning.
Yeah, so mine is not really a question though. I don't know if it's allowed. I wanted to add small something to kind of my own the way I understand the class and ID for like kind of an example. I don't know whether I can say that.
Okay. Okay. Let's hear.
Okay, so using this classroom now, for instance, so have the guys and the girls. So when they say the guys in this classroom, that we're talking about all the male gender in this class. But when we talk about the ID, see, kind of see like for it when we talk about say, okay, the only person that is permitted to talk in this class is Mr. Ugochukwu. So it's unique, it's peculiar to only him. That is in this room now. It can only be, we can only have we can only have one Mr. Ugochukwu who can talk in this class. That's for this class. But so in essence, the ID is kind of referring to a particular element. It's unique to a particular element. But the class has to, it refers to a group of uh, uh, um, elements. That's just my own example. That's why I felt that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So still the same thing, IDs and classes. So I say ID is like a more of a personality thing. You're unique from every other person. While class, they are generic there. So everybody wears the same uniform, everybody does the same assignments, that kind of stuff. So it's just a reminder for us. So I think for Amos's question for data list, yeah, we'll kind of have to discuss that properly on Slack. So I think we'll do that discussion. Yeah. All right. So let's go into what we have today. So, all right. So we've actually been working with CSS. We've been learning a couple of things. We based on our project, because the way we actually the way we actually walked through or jumped into CSS. So yeah, we didn't do it more like an explicit way, like let's say explaining each particular section, say, okay, this is this, this is that. We had to use projects to actually explain a couple of things. So that's why you see that I didn't really start with a CSS slide per se. So I just want to explain a couple of things so that we can actually understand uh, some part of CSS. Yeah. So quickly, Sha. So we've looked at block and inline elements. I believe we all understand what they actually entail. So block level, they span through the entire area. Inline, they actually take a just enough for that particular element or for that particular item. So actually, it's a kind of display property in CSS. So that's why when you use an anchor link, it just takes up the required amount, the required space. Then if you keep adding more anchor links, they just stack themselves or they just arrange themselves on the same line. So um, that is an inline element. But a block level element just kind of pushes it to the next line. So if you do a H1, it fills the entire space. If you want to put another element, you now have to like it now goes below that one. So it's one over the other, one over the other. So that kind of so then with the display property, so with the display property, you can hide stuff. You can use a display of none, visibility of hidden to actually do stuff. So for instance, you created a web page and then let's say you want to change the view on a smaller device. So you can use the display property to just hide it. Let's say you have an image, maybe you do this kind of a login page where you have an image beside, then beside a form. So they are like side by side, and then you want to like change the view on a mobile view, because if you're doing it on a mobile device, you're not actually going to say, okay, so half of my uh, document, or half of my page will have the image, and then the other part will have the form, because it will now be split, will look nice. So you probably want only the form to show up on a mobile device. So in that kind of situation, what do you do? So the fix will actually be setting the display property from changing it from so normal is actually going to show maybe inline. Is by default is either inline or block, but on a smaller device now, using media query, we'll actually look at that when we start building web pages. No, we've not really even started any serious thing yet. Because we're actually supposed to start building out a real web page. We are just handling this. What we just touched is just it's just a form. So we're supposed to like pick up a website, start building it out. But I need us to understand a couple of things before we start doing this, so that everybody will be on the same page, everybody will be happy. All right. So with the display property, you can actually hide it on a mobile view. Back to what I was saying. So that means it will show on a large device, but on a small device, it will show. So if you check my screen, what is showing here? I have this display of none. Basically, so this should have actually been more interactive. I can't do it here. So probably I'll just show it on yeah, when I'm using VS Code. So if I actually change it to a display of none, this entire block will just go off. Now, this other space that you're seeing here is when you're using visibility of hidden. So it kind of leaves off the space. So that space is just there. And then as in it hides the content, but still leaves the space here. Whereas when you're using display of none, it removes even the space. So if there were two other blocks here, these two blocks will now adjust to this position. So you now have this open space, and then this reset now takes up this empty space. So that's what happens. That's the difference between display of none and visibility of hidden. So display of none removes the entire block and adjusts the other content. Visibility of hidden just removes the content but still leaves that space. So let's just have that in mind. So that is an additional thing that you can do with your display property. All right. So yes, we also have the position property. So the position property specifies the type of positioning the type of positioning method used for an element. So they are when you're positioning stuff, when you're positioning stuff, you have the chance, you can do a whole lot of things with position. So you can, let's say okay, you have a header now, that's like your nav bar, and then you want it to, as you're scrolling your page, you don't want it to move along with the page content. You just want it to hang at the top there while the other content still flows. So you can use positioning to actually fix it to stay there. You can use position absolute to make something to like leave the normal flow of a page and just probably hang at a particular position. So there are different position values. There are different things that you can do with positioning. So we'll actually look at them. So by default, what we normally, so your elements, your HTML elements, they actually use this static position type. So you now have the option of either changing to relative, fixed, absolute, sticky. Yeah, so this position. So we'll look at how these things work. So elements are then positioned. Okay, you can use the top, bottom, left, and right properties. However, these properties will not work unless the position property is set first. So you need to set the position property first. So then based on that now, you now have to set, when you set the position value, let's say you say fixed, you say absolute or anything. So it now has to work with respect to that particular value. So like I said, we'll also look at how this works. Let's take note of all of this. So you really have to like use static, position static, or you see position relative, fixed, absolute, and sticky. All right, so like I was explaining, position static, HTML elements are position static by default. So that's why I said you won't have to do the position of static because it comes by default. Now, when you now move over to position relative, so an element with position relative is position relative to its normal position. So it's relative to wherever you fix it. That's what happens. Now, when you talk about position of fixed, this now shows that an element that is fixed is positioned relative to that viewport. So which means it stays at that same place, even if the page is scrolled. So when you say be fixed here, it just stays at that particular point. If you like scroll the page, my guy will still stay there. So that's what happens with position of fixed. So position of absolute, an element with position of absolute is position relative to the nearest position ancestor. So it's not only human beings that actually have ancestors. So even your HTML elements also have ancestors, great grandfathers, grandfathers, and all. So instead of being positioned relative to the viewport, it's actually positioned relative to the next position. So if you want to use a position of absolute, you probably have to use a position of relative for the parent element. So the element that is holding that particular, I call it element. So element holding an element here. So has to have a position of relative or has to have a particular position so that it's a position of relative, basically, not even so that it is absolute with respect to that position. So I will show us how this works. So position of sticky, an element with position of sticky is positioned based on the user scroll position. So say for instance, you want a heading to hang. So it's not at the top, let's say, but you want as you scroll, it should just hang at a particular point. So it just sticks at a particular point. So I think we should understand all of these things. Let's go on. Another thing that we have to talk about is Z index. So there are times when you use something like position, absolute, and all of that. So it's possible for something to overlap the other one, but you want, so if you check this my image now, this tree probably was positioned absolute, and then it was covering this heading and then this paragraph. So to actually make the heading and the paragraph to stand out, the image was given a Z index of -1. So that kind of pushed it backward. So Z index is a value. The higher it is, the higher the element or the item comes out. So if I gave a Z index of maybe 5 for the tree, actually cover the heading and the paragraph. As we gave it a value of -1, so it kind of pushed it behind the text. So let's take note of that. So when elements are positioned, they can overlap other elements. So the Z index property specifies the stack order of an element, which element should be placed in front of or behind the others. So Z index can actually be a positive or a negative value. So it can be a positive or negative stack. Let's take it. Then, speaking of overflows, so there are times when you develop a page and then you see that, oh, the content is too much, showing this whole content. Showing the when it comes to whole now, my head's asking, it's showing the content, maybe it makes it look boring and overwhelming. So you want a way of handling or maybe reducing the amount of content that your users get to see. So you can use an overflow property to actually clip the content so that you just see a little amount and then you're able to go through it bit by bit. So overflow property here specifies whether to clip the content or to add scroll bars when the content of an element is too big to fit in the specified area. So kind of like you have this scroll bar depending on how you want to set it. So you have a scroll bar and then the user is able to scroll through it without having to go through a whole lot of things at once. So the overflow property has the following values. It has so by default, it is visible. So the overflow is not clipped. The content comes outside the box. So we'll see how this works. So the content comes outside the box. So and then it kind of looks funky. There are ways of handling this. So you have the hidden there. So if you use hidden, the overflow is split, and then the rest of the content, the user does not see it. Nobody sees it. So you also have the scroll value where the overflow is split, and then there's a scroll bar that you can use to see the rest of the content. So a typical example of something of this sort is your text area. So you kind of put, yes, you want to write the story of your life inside there, and then you keep writing and writing and writing. And at some point, you now notice that, okay, I have to scroll, see more content to read what I've written. Okay, so that's scroll bar is there. So the same way, that's the way this overflow stuff works. So you have auto is similar to scroll, but it has scroll bar only when necessary. So let's take note of that. Okay, and then we now have a CSS Flexbox. So I want us to actually look at this because this will help us Because the next thing that we're supposed to work on is a web page. So the web page, basically, you have to use Flexbox. So there was a point when people had to use floats, people had to use tables. So you kind of have you have to, like, okay, let's say you want an image on one side and then you want a text on the other side. So there's a time people used to use float. So you kind of put one float left and then the other one float right. That kind of, yeah, that kind of scenario. That for me personally, it used to be very tricky because you now have to be looking for a way to make it to balance out and all of that. So very tricky stuff. But with the introduction of Flexbox, it makes it sort of easy. So like it says here, it makes it easier to design flexible, responsive layouts without using floats or position. So formally, people, so the way we've been looking at layout, so you have the block, you have the line, so all of this works. Then there are people that I remember there was a time I used to use table to kind of, okay, it's very funny in my head now. So a navbar basically. So you have a navbar, and you know when you want to do navbars, you kind of have this part where you have the logo at one end, and then you have the links at the other end. So those days I would use a table to kind of divide, okay, the first row is for the logo, then the other the other section, the other table, the other rows or the other columns or cells are for the links. So very crazy stuff. So there's time people actually use table to position things. Then you also have the position, the one we actually looked at, where you kind of have to position things at different points using those position values. So, but with Flexbox now, let's say you want 3 items to be side by side. You can just do a display of flex and then put your elements inside it, and then everything sits properly. So we'll actually look at this because this will usher us into how we can use it to create web pages. So our flex container, okay, so when you're dealing with Flexbox, you need to have a flex container like your parent item. So whatever is holding those items that you want to arrange. So like here now, we have this blue section where you have the items inside. So like this is the parent container that holds these 3 items. So now these are the items inside it, parent. So this is the flex container. You have to set a property of flex. Yeah. So display of flex for this. So when it displays flex now, it's able to affect these items that are inside here. So that flex container, these are the things that you can actually do with it. You can set a flex direction, you can set a flex wrap, you can set a flex flow, justify content, align items, and all. So these things will actually look at them bit by bit. So before we start getting our hands dirty and all, I've been talking, no code, nothing. Yeah. Do we have any questions so far? We should jump into getting our hands. I hope you guys can hear me and I wasn't talking to myself.
We can hear you, sir.
All right. So yeah. Do we have any questions? If you have, you just raise your hand. Okay, so let's get our hands dirty. It is then. All right, so let me pull up VS Code. Okay, Barry, and go on. What's the question?
All right, good morning, everybody.
Yeah, good morning.
Yeah, it's actually my first time in class.
Wow.
I've always been, I've always been watching the YouTube videos. Okay, this is my first live session with you guys. Okay, my question is about the flex box
Yeah.
and the navigation bar. Can we actually use that for the navigation bar?
Very, very well. As in, it helps you a lot there, sir. Yeah. So we'll actually try to create something of that sort today, just so that our class can go fast. Yeah. And I hope my pace is not too fast for people. Yeah.
No, thank you.
So we'll actually do that today. Okay, so who else has a question? Okay, so no question. So let's just go on. Okay. So I was talking about, I was talking about the display property. So let me use different. I hope you can see this good. Yeah, someone said I should actually increase my font. All right. Okay, so I think my font is better now. Yeah, so let me start from let me just create a section. I want to explain the display property. How does that work? So let's see how that works. So I have a section, and I'm going to explain. I'm going to explain a. Going to. I just hope it doesn't get clumsy. So I'm going to like create what looks like a form, just a form, and then I'm going to explain how the display property works. So I have a section, and then inside the section, say I want my image to be on one end, I want my form to be on the other end. So yeah, I'm just being creative, like I asked you guys to be creative. So inside here, let me say I have the image box. So here now, I have a good image here. So let's say, for instance, I want to add okay, I want to add the image, the girl here. So I'm going to say image. Let me just use page background. So img / page background. Yeah, I'm just going to do page. Actually, this should be more descriptive in it. Someone knows what you're trying to do. Okay. So I have image box. So this is my image box. Yeah, it's just going to be there. And then I have my form box. Just in case you've not submitted and then you actually want to do something nice. I'm not saying you should copy my own work. All right. So form box. So inside the form box, let me just take what we already have here. So I have a H1 with about, I have a paragraph with thank you for taking the time to help us improve the platform. So let's see what this looks like first. I'm going to close this. I'm going to go live again. Wow, this is so wonderful. Okay. Let me just. So my image is so big and my text is underneath. So let me just fix that. So back to VS Code. So I'm not going to follow the way I actually started it out. So, so let me just call this a flex container. After doing this, I'll just follow the sequence. I don't miss anything. So I'm calling this a flex container, and this is my image box. So let me just create a new CSS so that we don't get confused. I'll call this about .cs. It sounded weird in my head. Okay, so I need to link this up. I like to put this up. This should be house. My capital letter is house. Okay, so about, I have my about.css, and then here now. So I've linked this. So if I press Control and click here, it leads me to this about.css. So a very good way of checking if you've linked properly. All right, so now I kind of want to resize. So I have my image box, the div. I have my form box. So I want to use this. I want to explain flex, and then I'll use that to also explain the display property. So here now I have a flex container, so I will call that flex container. So please, something I want us to take note of is you kind of, when you're building a page, I think the first thing you should actually do is you do a manual reset. So when I say a reset of your page, I mean you do this asterisk thingy where you do margin 0, adding 0, sizing, border box. Yeah. I think somebody had the issue. Somebody wrote something else here, and then yeah, that kind of became a problem. So it's very important. This is border box. It kind of divides your screen into small boxes. Yeah, it happens behind the scenes. Yeah. Okay, so this is a manual reset. Then we have this flex container. Now this flex container, I want to do a display of flex. So when you're dealing with flex, you kind of have to set a display of flex. So let me explain the ancestors and ancestors. All right, so now the way this whole document flows, this is the body is like Adam. And then after Adam, we now have okay, after Adam, we now have, let me just use Abel. Then Abel now has now has his own set of children. Now, so he has two sets of children, first son, second son. Now this first son now has his own child, which is this one. So you see how the ancestral system is actually going. Great grandfather, grandfather, father, child. So this one has two children, this and this. So that's why your indentation is kind of important. The indentation is important. Yeah, so let's take note of that. So I'm trying to explain this in case you don't get it. So see, I have lines showing on my own so that you show that it's so that you know that everything is in place. So this body has its own closing tag here. This section has its own here. This so this div has its own here, and then the form box has its own. So all of them, they are adjusting, they are going step by step. So you know which one is the father, which one is the child, which one is the father, child, that kind of relationship. So here now I have my image. This is the parent here, and these are the children now. So this parent now, the flex container has the display of flex. Now that display of flex now, it's now going to place this and this side by side. So the way Flexbox, Flex actually goes in a row. So if you use display of Flex, you see what happens now. So let me check. So before this was, you know the way div works. So it puts one on top of the other one. But now when you're using Flex, you kind of have to do this thing where you have a okay, you have content side by side. So that's the way the flow works. So it kind of turns your div, instead of it being one over the other one, it places it side by side. So that's what Flex does. All right, so I have done this. Let's go on. So I have my parent has a Flex container, but then I am having some issues here. So this my image box is not defined. Like I don't have a size for it. My form box too, I don't have a size for it. So everything is just so loose and stuff. Then by the way, you can be, so let's just take note of this. So the beauty of building with projects is that you get to see a couple of things that maybe while explaining, while doing the normal serial classes, you you don't maybe the tutor or someone does not explain that part. So you can combine styles. You can combine styles like so flex container. I want to target this image box now. I can do flex container dot image. So instead of using just one direct stop here, so I'm kind of combining two things inside here. So I have what? My flex container. So this is saying, come to the flex container, find the image box that is inside the flex container. So that's the way this works. So if you check now, find my father, find my brother, or find, yeah, that kind of thing. So this is the father, and then this is the child. So it's the child now that we are trying to style here. So we are now saying have a width. Let's say we want to divide it into two equal parts. So we can say have a width of what? 50%. Let's see if that works first. So our image is still an issue. Okay. So our image is an issue here. So let's see if we can resize that image. But I'm looking for, so I'm looking for the flex container, parents, father. So this is trying to target the image itself. Let's say we want a width of 100%. So this is what happens. Okay, hands are raised, hands are raised. Okay, okay. Did I get lost? Okay, so basically, yeah.
Good morning. I have two questions.
Yeah.
First one was, does display inline do the same thing? Because I wanted to do it with my task for yesterday. I wanted to make the logo stay on the same line as the heading. But I didn't know about this, so I tried display inline, but it didn't work. So what does display inline do?
Display in lines, it makes it more like, you know, when you add an anchor tag, so it keeps it like side, you're able to stack things side by side, side by side. So it actually works, but the better way of doing it, that's why Flex is kind of better. It helps you to just achieve that with ease. So I want an image to be here, and then I want maybe my form to be this side. So with Flex now, I have just been able to resize this to actually fit in properly. So I think Flex, depending on what you want, if I'm actually getting the picture you're trying to create. So you want a logo side something.
I wanted the logo to be at the top left corner and then the heading of the page to be at the center.
Okay, to be at the center.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll actually just we'll just try and touch that because it's part of Flex. So I'll explain it better when we get there.
Okay, I also have another question.
All right.
When you were styling, can you please open the VS Code again? When you put those two flex container and then image box together, is that not the way to style two things together? Like if you want to style both flex container and image box.
Okay. I can't hear you clearly. Are you still talking?
Okay. Let me explain again. When you were explaining something to us, for example, if you want to style both H1 and P and then an image,
okay,
at the same time, is that not the same way you do this?
Okay, so I think the difference is that you have to do a comma.
Okay.
Do that, yeah. But this one now you're not doing a comma, you're just going parent, child, parents, parents, child.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Tulupe, yeah.
Okay, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Use this dot flex container dot image box img. Now,
Yes.
if the children are so indented, would you have to always call it from the grandparents or the great grandparents before you get to what you're actually looking for? Could you have done this CSS without the dot flex container?
I remove this. That's you mean?
Yes, sir. Exactly. Since you're already calling the class.
So it works.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. So where the scenario where you have to do this is probably you just want to be more specific. So this is just affects only this IMG because there's a mistake that people normally do. So maybe you just target the IMG tag and then you're giving a width of 100%. Maybe that's not what you want for your whole page. But because you've done this, it's affecting all the items on your page. So just to curb that effect, you need to either specify it this way, going from the parents and pointing to that particular element. So it knows that it's just only this I'm affecting. So if I check the page, I only need to find where there's flex container and then find if it has the image box and then affects only the image that is there. So this is the last item is usually the one that is affected, not this, not even these other guys. So let's take a look at that.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
All right. So yeah, open level. No question.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. So my question is, when do we know to use button or a link?
Okay.
I don't know if you get my question.
Yeah, I get a question. So
Yeah.
there are different ways to actually think it out. So a scenario could be you want somebody to, when you want to go to another page, when you want to move, you want someone to click, when you click on something, it takes you to a different page. You use an anchor tag as a link. When you want to, okay, when you want to do a particular, let's say you want to submit a form, or submit, yeah, well, you can use a button for a submit. So you want to submit a form or you want to do a particular function. So when we get to JavaScript, you see that you use buttons to do a whole lot of things. You have to like do, so when you click on a button, this should actually happen. When you do this should actually happen. So linking is basically for routing a page, yeah, moving to another page. Whereas buttons are just to perform certain functions or to run a certain line of code, which I'm basically calling a function. So with time, you get to understand what it does. But there are times when people, so you have an anchor tag, and then you want it to look nice. So you kind of make it to look like a button. That is a different use case. That's what some people actually do. So it's just a thing of preference. So you're just styling it to look like a button, but the function, what it's actually doing is still doing the work of a link. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, so I think we are good on that. Does anybody have any question? We are understanding the flow here. Okay, so yeah, so all right, so let's go on. So you see now, I have this here. If I wanted to put my form now, that will now be tricky. So if I wanted to put my form now, I could just put my form. Let me just copy that. So table. So I could just put my form here. So I'm just going to do a very rough form. Just come to my about. So under this paragraph now, I just dump in my. So you see now, I have my image here. I have my form here, which is not so nice. Yes. But the goal of today is not to style the form. So I'm just trying to explain, okay, this is what happens. This is what happens. So let's say this is what it looks like on a laptop. So you have this image here, and then you have this one here. Then, for instance, you now say on a small screen, so see what it's looking like now. So this is not nice for a small device. Like this is punishing. This is punishing. So this is happening. and it's not nice. So a way of tackling this could be, so remember I talked about the flex, about the CSS. So the values that the flex container can have. So we said, let me just open up this slide. Just go to the last things. Okay, so yeah. So let's say we want to change the flex direction. So by default, you see that the flex direction is going to it's a row kind of thing. So you want maybe the flex direction to change, maybe column. So you want the image to maybe be on top. So this kind of scenario, this could be maybe something that you want to try doing on a small screen. But if this is not what you have in mind, so I'm just going to do a very long jump. So that's media, and maximum width. Maybe 130 pixels. So here now, I want my flex container. So what I'm doing here, I'll explain. So my flex container here, I want the flex direction to be a column. So I'm targeting this on a small screen. So this is actually how you check for a small device. So this is called media query. We'll look at it deeper with time. But now I'm just doing this so that we understand this scenario. I'm going to remove this here. So we understand what is happening here. So I need us to really get this. Okay. So if I open this, so on a laptop, this is what it's looking like. But on a small phone, this is what it's looking like. Now, why is it so? Because I said on a small device, that is a device that has a screen size of 430 pixels and below, the flex direction of the flex container should be column. So by default, it is actually row here. So this section, this top section is for your laptop device. And then this is for your smaller device. So I'm saying have a flex direction of column when it comes to a small screen. Now, if I don't want it, if this is not what I want, I don't want this image. I don't want this image to be here. What I could do is I could just say, I just target this image box. I'm copying this. All this is happening on a small screen. And then I'm saying display none. Don't show on a small device. I don't need the image on a small device. So with that now, you see that on a small device now, this is not showing up. No matter how much I reload this page, this guy doesn't show. The image is gone. But if I do visibility of hidden, let's see what that looks like. So you see now, we have this space here. So it's actually just occupying that space, but it is not showing up. So visibility of hidden just removes it, as it removes the content so that you don't see it, but leaves that space there. Display of none removes that distance, removes that element. Removes the element completely and just adjust the contents to fit into that place. So if we do understand that. All right. So that was me explaining. The display property. So next thing I will now look at is this position thing. What is position? How does it work? So let me remove this. So how does this thing work? So I'm going to just comment this form for now. So well, you can actually, so while you're creating your own form, if you want to make your form to be like my own, you can actually go and try it out. It's not hard. And if you want it side by side, but I just need you to just be able to come up with something. Think of something. How do you want to style your form? How do you want your form to look like? Just come up with something. Yeah. So I said for elements, normal elements, you have them in they are usually static. Now, so let's start with what's the first thing here. So relative. Let's do the relative thing. So I'm going to just create a div. So I need to address this. This is a child of. Yeah. So this div now, let me just give it a class of relative. So in my CSS now, I'll just call. So let's not get confused with this thing. We'll talk about it on a very good day. Hot coffee. Yeah. All right. So here, I want to do position of relative. That's relative. It's a class. So it has a position of relative. Yes. So inside this so that we know what is happening. So I'm just going to do a lorem of the paragraph lorem of 20. Alternate and Z. Wrap it. So let's see what. So this is what I have. Let me open this here. So I have this. Now we said let it be positioned relative. So this relative div is positioned relative to this where it is. Now because it's positioned relative to where it is, we have access to some new styling, some new property value kind of thing. So we can say left. So left of maybe 40 pixels. Probably you want it to adjust. So you see now, it's adjusting from this place by 30 pixels. Now, I just want to draw attention to something so that we see it on time. See this scroll bar, this thing. If you're doing a website or a web page and then you have this, that something is wrong, very wrong with your site. So there needs to be a way to cope this kind of thing. So you check the sizing of your element, you check things, how you position stuff here. So the reason why this is happening is because you're saying adjust to the left, and then it's just pushing it towards the left and all of that. So towards the right. I don't know direction. Okay, so you have access to left, you have access to your right. Want to do that right, so maybe 20 pixels. So if you're using right, you can't use right and left. You have to use one. So this is what is happening. Have this, So when you say position of relative, so it's position relative to that particular point, and then you can adjust it using your right and left property. So that is just a little bit about position relative. So let me just talk about position absolute. So let's say I have a div, and then I want to create a ball. Let me just say ball. So let me just call this ball. With my CSS now, I just call ball. So I want a height of, let's say, 50 pixels. I want it to be a perfect circle. So height and width of 50 pixels. All right, so let's take a look. I'm spacing this. Okay, so I want it to have a color, background color, cannot be white. So background color of maybe green. Okay, so let's see what it's looking like. You see, this guy is pushing this thing here. So background color of green, I want it to be a circle, so I'll just say border radius of 50. So you see so I have a ball now. Now, let me just add more content here. Just going to duplicate. So you see that give my it's overshooting to this side, but I just want to use it and explain it. So I have this div at this bottom point. So you have this text, how many paragraphs? 1, 2, 3, 4. You have 4 paragraphs before. You have 4 paragraphs before you now have this div, this ball showing up here. Say for instance, I want the ball to be at the top here. I could just come here. And just say, have a position. So that, let me confirm something. Hope you guys can still hear me. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay, so I have put a position of absolute. And then I thought that this should actually leave the normal flow and probably come to the top, but it's not coming up. So I will still use, we also have this, sorry. Yeah. So you have a top. top property. So you want it to stay at the top, maybe 30 pixels. You see what is happening here. So it has left this position and then come 30 pixels from the top. So remember that the div holding all of this. This is the div holding all of this. So it's calculating 30 pixels from the top to this point. So like I said, you can, okay. Sorry about that. I hope it's better now. Hope the audio is better. Okay, so it calculates 30 pixels from the top of that div. So it calculates 30 pixels from the top of the div to the point where it's going to start from. So 30 pixels, and then it starts building its nest here. So if I actually wanted it to be at maybe the right, I could just say right of maybe 40 pixels. So see how the two of them tie together. So this is, so it position absolute kind of, it leaves the normal flow. The normal flow is first paragraph, second paragraph, third paragraph, fourth paragraph, and then the div. So using position absolute, it makes it to leave the normal flow. And then you're able to position it at different points. If I want it at the center, I could actually put it at the center. If I want it at the top, I could actually put it at the top. So that's what happens when you're using position or absolute. So you have access to like, top and right property. You also have access to left and bottom. So that's what happens with position absolute. So for those of, if you're curious about how I got the ball, yeah. So you have to set a width and a height. You have to set a width and a height, and then you also have to set the border radius to be 50%. So 50% gives you like a round edge. Yeah. So for position relative works relative to that particular position where it is. So that's why you see this is shooting out. This is, we said okay, adjust to the right by, let me see if I can get this. Oh, I need the, sorry, give me a moment. So I need relative, yeah. So this now, it says adjust to the right, adjust 20 pixels to the right. So you adjust 20 pixels. So that's why you're seeing it's entering, is encroaching into this image section. By right, it's not supposed to, because we said adjust to the right by 20 pixels. So that's why it's moving to this section, to this side. But so that's for position relative. So you have access to using right, up, bottom, and all of that when you're using position. But when you're using absolute, absolute says leave the normal flow. This other one, when you're using relative, the normal flow of the page, one on top of the other, will still work. But when you're using absolute for a particular element, and then you set the top or the right properties, it leaves the normal flow of the page. So normally this div would have been at the bottom here, but because I use position of absolute, and then I said move to the top 30 pixels. So from the top to this point is 30 pixels. Then now says from the right, adjust by 40 pixels. So from the right, adjust by 40 pixels. Yes, so you can use, or even top. For position relative, you can also work from top, adjusting to the top or adjusting to the bottom. So absolute, yes, it moves out of the normal flow. That's what happens for var. Okay, okay. So I've talked about absolute, I've talked about relative. Yeah. So the next one is fixed. All right, let's see how fixed works. I'm going to create I need more content. Okay, so I'm just going to create, so this is ball. I'll just create a ball one. So my ball one. What do I need for that ball one? Oh, now I'm not too fast. Yeah, it actually overlaps content. Okay, yeah. So border radius. Okay, so that's my ball one. Let me see where my ball one is featured. So let's see. So this is it. This is my ball one. So I'm going to just add more content because I want to be able to scroll through my page. So this is section. Let me just add another section below. Just going to do a paragraph. I'll add lorem. And I will just keep multiply. Let's see. So this is what happens. So everything is moving on my page. So this is what is happening. Everything is just moving on the page. Say for instance, I now in that my for that my ball one now. I now do a position of now position. So do we notice something? I am moving, but my ball too is not moving. So let me add more content inside there. Add color, so that's this is so color of white. Yeah, so what is happening? This is moving, but that is staying fixed. That's why when you don't want something to just use position of fixed and it stays at that particular point, it doesn't matter how you scroll, it just stays fixed. Okay, so talk about fixed and what is remaining here. Talked about, okay, so sticky is the next in line. All right, for sticky now, I'm going to create another div. Yeah, there are a whole lot of divs. So I'll just create another div here. I'm going to try to explain overflow and then explain sticky using this. So let's just listen at the rest. So class of so let me just call this sticky. So inside sticky now, I probably have a height of so let me just put content inside it. So I still have Lauren inside here. Okay, so I think I need to adjust this. I need to adjust. Let me remove that. Let me comment this this right for this position of relative so that you get to see it better. Okay, so we have this. Let me remove this ball 2, the ball 1 rather. Okay. This is what we have now. So let's say, for instance, I'm going to call sticky here. So this is for sticky now. So I kind of want it to have a height. Let's say a height of 300 pixels. Let me just put a border so that we can actually see what is going on. So border takes pixels, solid, border. This is actually large. 300 pixels is large, so let me just make this. Let me just make it 200. Let me add more content. So you see what is happening here. Then the height of 20 pixels is 200 pixels. Okay, so you'll notice now, you see that we have text coming out of this place. Let me make it 100 pixels so that we can actually see what's going on. All right, so this is it. So we have, this is actually supposed to be 100 pixels, but we have content coming out of it. So this is where this overflow thing comes in. So by default, it has this, it's visible. The overflow just stays there. As in, you just see it outside the box. So the content is outside the elements box. Now, if I now say, okay, so since we have overflow here, So I want the overflow to be hidden. So come back here. Then you see it cuts out every other distance. So even if I scroll through my page, which is not scrolling, I don't see it. I don't see the extra content. So that's what overflow of hidden does. So for this particular box, where it's a height of 200, but we have overflow, the content is more than the size of the box. So overflow of hidden actually hides this. So if I now say overflow of scroll, overflow scroll, so you kind of have this. Yeah, I think I need to decide this. Yeah, so you have this scroll stuff here. So you're able to adjust, see the other content inside here. This one doesn't function because you're not scrolling here. So overflow scroll actually acts for the X and Y axis. So this is the Y axis, and then this is the X axis. So if we want it to probably be on the Y axis alone, overflow Y. So we only have it on the Y axis. It's only for the X. Okay. Overflow X still drags in the other one because kind of have more content. So it says, okay, we still have this again. Yes. So everybody's waiting for the sticky attributes. All right. Okay, so I was just trying to explain overflow. Let me see what else that I have not talked about. So scroll and then auto. Let's see what auto does. So for auto, it just checks for where do we need the scroll? Do we need it for the x-axis? No. So we just need it for the y-axis. So it just adds for a particular point that needs the scroll. So that is for overflow. So let me explain the sticky now. Let me expand this. I wanted us to see that. All right. So inside here now. I'm going to put a ball. I'll just click on the ball tool. Sorry about that. Is it better now? Okay. So the same thing, but I'm just going to change from position of fixed, so position of sticky. Let's see how that happens. So, okay. I think I need to. Okay. So do we notice something now? What do we notice? If you noticed anything, just raise your hand. Okay, to look there, yeah.
Sorry, sir, I did not know my hand was raised though.
Okay, Obuleme. Yeah. Okay. Obuleme, are you there?
Sorry, sir, can you do what you did before again? Just to see it again, sir.
Okay. So I scroll when I get to the top, something happens to the ball.
So can I speak?
Yeah, you can.
So since you specify top 0, so it will scroll with the content, but when it reaches the top 0, it stays fixed.
Yes, just this fixed there. So it just sticks to the top because I specified at 0. Yeah, just stick. I hope we understand that. When it reaches the top, just this. Yeah. So do we understand that? Or do we have questions? Buleme, do you have a question?
Hello.
Sir?
Sorry, I said, can you hear me? Sorry, you were asking me. You called my name the first time. I was trying to talk, but my network was kind of hanging.
Okay, okay.
Okay. So my question, sir, is on this positioning now. Since it alters the normal flow of the document, is there no? Won't it affect other viewports? Is there no other way we can
It will
go
affect
around it
them.
without?
It will definitely affect the viewport because you kind of have, when you do it on this screen now, when you go to a different screen, you have to also set it on a different screen, how you want it to be on that screen. So that's what happens there.
So my question is, is there no other way that we can avoid it, like without even using it at all? We use another thing.
So it just depends on the scenario, Sha. So it depends on what you're working on. If it requires you to use it, why not? But if it does not require you to use it, if it does not require you to use it, you just, yeah, you can stay away from it. I actually did not
Okay,
used to
sir.
like, yeah, I actually did not used to like positioning because because it's kind of tricky sometimes. You have to set it for yeah, it's kind of tricky to do it for one viewport and then move to another one, and then you have to also set the same thing. So if you don't understand how to do it, it now gives you a problem. So yeah, I believe that answers that. So Gochku, yeah, you have a question?
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
So when you were setting the stuff to 0, I mean the sticky whatever you
Yes.
added there, the sticky div there. So what if you change it to like 1 or 2 or 3? Well, I want to see the effect. I don't know if you would actually show me that.
So I'm not getting that.
Like you made this stick to the top by
Yes.
setting the value to 0. What if you
Okay.
change it to 1 or 2, or is it in
Okay.
pixel? Let me just know.
Yeah, it's actually a pixel. So if you do sticky at let's say 30 pixels, so let's see what happens. So you come here at 30 pixels from the top, it just hangs there. That is it.
Okay, sorry. So you can do top and bottom.
Yes, you can do uh, use one when you're using, yeah, when you're using that now, like I said, for this thing, you can use if you're using left, you only have to use left. You cannot do left and right. So left, either left or right. So when you're using top, you do either top or bottom, depending on the flow you want to.
Okay, you just use left and you use left and right to position it, and you use left or right or top or bottom to position it where you want it to be.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Positioning is tricky. Danny. Danny, your question. Your hand is raised.
Oh, sorry. When I raised my hand was when you were asking if we noticed anything. So someone has already answered it.
All right. He divide.
Yeah, sorry. I have been, because I code with my phone, I don't have a laptop, so I've been having issues with this particular positioning. What's it called? Will I call it them? Or yes, I'm having issues with it because in my background image, it doesn't really stay how I want it to stay. And if I put a background image, and when I scroll up, like I don't know if it's only me that is seeing it or it's just me, but particles of the background image follows some of the text to scroll up to. I swear, I just this and the thing will just be going up with it too, and it's frustrating. I've tried to fix the scrolls, the absolute, it's not working.
Okay, so so this is what is going to happen. Okay, I don't think I really got everything from the question, but I would like to see a screenshot of what it's like, if you can actually get that.
Okay, do you want me to get it now or maybe on Slack?
Yeah, on Slack would be nice.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, Augustine.
Good day, everyone.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
What I'm saying.
Your voice is actually.
Okay, what I want to say on this positioning of thing is, if there is a way we can just redo it, I don't know, or because I wanted to ask question.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to start from because as I am right now, head off. I have to go through this video again.
Okay. We'll discuss more about it on Slack. We'll revisit it. We can talk about it on Slack. Okay, I think that is all for this. Okay, so that is all for this. So so let me look at something before let's just create. I just hope we have small time here. Let's just create let's do this flex thing. Let's look at, is it really that heavy? Okay, so let's just create a header and let's see how that works. So I'll just do my header tag. So inside here now, I probably want a logo, so I'll just do maybe a H1. Let me just do this. Just going to write. Okay, then inside here now. So inside here now, let me just scroll up, sorry. So the next one I want is let me just use what they are suggesting. So I have a menu. Yeah, so a menu. So I have the logo. So I want the logo to be on one side, and then I want the menu to be on one side. So let's just see how this works. So the way things, the way this, so let me just resize it. I don't see myself. So I'm having an issue here. So let me just adjust this. So let me just call my header and just give it a padding 100 pixels. I want to see what I want to do. Yeah, so this is it. So I have my logo here. So this thing actually stacks one over the other, one over the other. When you're using divs and sort, so one stays on top of the other now, but we want to change that. So what I will do here is, so this is the header. So I want a display. So it's the parent. I want a display of what? Flex. So this now puts the logo and then the links. So this is supposed to be my links. So the logo and then the links side by side. All right. Let's just have this one in mind for our brains start to bust. So there's a property, justify content, space between. So you want your items to actually go one on this end and these other ones on this other end. This is the logo. This is supposed to be the links. So you see that they are on two ends. So that is one. But then this thing here, these are our lists. You check if I inspect now. You see that they are not on the same line. Because because this content here is more, and then this is just one. So we need to kind of balance it out. So we use align items, center. So you see now that both of them are kind of on the same line. So I want this to also be on the same. So display of flex, what did it actually do? So it made both of them to be on the same line instead of one on top of the other. And then because I now use justify content space between, so it gave a space between logo and then the links. Formerly they were side by side, but now the logo is on one side, the links are on the other side. Then align items of center, try to balance both of them so that they are on the same line. So if I come here now, you kind of see what I mean. So both of them, they're on the same line at the center there. Now, I want to kind of, I just want you guys to play around with it. So this menu and then this UL. So I want this LIs to actually also be on a straight line to be side by side. So because they are lists, so it's one on top of the other, one on top of the other. So let me just do that. So I'll just say header dot menu. Do we need this code? Should I put it on CodeCamp for us? Okay. So I'm targeting the on ordered list. So I want it to display flex. And then I don't want the dots. That's why I did list style of none. So if you check now, you see. If I do not do that list style of none, I do this. So you see that we still have those dots here. That list style of none kind of it removes. So this list style of none removes those things. Then maybe you want, well, let's just okay. Okay, the text, the suggestions. So I have an extension. That's what suggests things are. So pilots. What is suggesting for? So yes, that is where we are drawing the contour. Let me see. No. Okay, for the UL now. So if you kind of want to give space between each of them, so you have to target. So look at this flow now. Sorry. So there's a menu, there's header, there's menu, then there's UL. So this LI now. Okay, so this LI now, I need to now target the LI. List. And then I want imagine, let's imagine right. Or I think I'll just go for margin left. Kind of makes sense. Yeah, so I just use margins to adjust it. This is what I have. So Mark, I hope that answers your question. All right,
Hello?
so yes, who has a question? I'm seeing hands up. Okay, so Danny, is your question? Do you have a question? No, you don't have a question. Please just bring your hand down so that we know who has a question. Yeah, Augustine, do you have a question? Yeah, Delope. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir. Do background attachments work on divs and paragraphs?
So you said background attachment.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So background attachment is basically for background. So it just keeps that background. So if you say have a that it should be fixed, it just stays there. As in, as you scroll as your text goes through it, the image is just fixed. So that's what background attachment does. It just stays, the image that is behind just stays fixed. That's what happened there.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Get that?
Yes, sir.
All
Thank
right.
you, sir.
Okay, so yeah, so in the absence of any question,
Yeah, I have a question. Hello?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I had a network glitch, so I missed out on where you included is it at media? So
Okay.
I don't know the function of that.
Okay, so let's just talk about it on Slack because we have like 6 minutes. I don't even know who spoke. Just reach out on Slack. Just remind me on Slack. Talk about it. Yeah. So in the absence of that, IK, Oh, sorry, one more thing. Um, yeah. So one more thing. So when you're working with CodePen, so I've seen a couple of things. I've seen people actually, you attach your CSS inside the section that is for HTML. So as much as possible, let's just take note of that there's a place for CSS. Yeah. So let's just take note that there's a place for CSS. So put your CSS inside there. It works very well. It's like external styling. It picks it up and it does the job. So as much as possible. And then please and please, when you're using CodePen, try not to bring in the head, all those things. Just use maybe from inside, from the content of the body, just put from the, if you're working on VS Code and you want to move it, try and move it from the content of the body. Even the body tag does not need to be inside CodePen. You just start it from a section and move on from there. CodePen is smart, you understand stuff. So yeah. So let's just take note of that. So as much as, yeah, so that's all from me. So IK. Oh.